Welcome to R Mochi Podcast, the only podcast rated R for Robin. Today, my guest is Bogdan Habic. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
That's a completely correct pronunciation.
Yes! Co-founder of Tenderly.co, Batch Zero or Batch Beta, one of the... You've been here for a while. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So yeah, we were briefly talking about like getting shots at I'm scheduled for like a flu shot. This just reminded me of like this one thing. Since coming to Ukraine, I have gotten so many shots. I've only been here for about like 2.5 years, but I've gotten shots for so many different things now.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I find it particularly interesting. I remember when I was a kid, I only got the mandatory ones, and my mom was one of those anti-vaxxers at the end of the 90s, basically. So I remember going to school. It was really strange. Everybody was getting shots except me, which I thought was really cool. As a kid, you don't really like needles,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of like a boon. But afterwards in life, I was like, oh, wait, this will screw up my immune system a bit.
So did you after the fact get a bunch of did you recently get vaccinated for all the stuff, or did you how did you do that?
You actually cannot get all of it afterwards. So some of the things, it's like a train going by and you cannot get it like retroactively. But all of the things that I could, I did.
Uh-huh.
The moment I got over 18, I could decide for myself.
When did you find out that when did you understand that you weren't properly vaccinated for stuff?
No, I did know. I just didn't know what are the consequences of not being vaccinated. I was more like, this is. She always told me this is an optional thing. It doesn't bring that much value. So
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, it was what, under 10, you kind of listen to your mom and be like, okay, sure, I don't need this.
Uh-huh.
So I think it was age. I think second or third year of high school, something along those lines. I was like, fuck.
So you're in Serbia. Is it a requirement for the school system for you to be vaccinated to go to school, or I guess not?
If you mean in general, you do have pre-pandemic, you did have mandatory vaccines, and for example, I did have those.
Mm-hmm.
After that, now for COVID, I genuinely don't know, as I don't have a kid, or I don't know that many kids. That would be a red flag. So,
Man, one thing that I had no. This is definitely one of those things that you just could not predict, but getting vaccines has become such a political thing. I think it started in the U.S., but even in Ukraine right now, there are so many people that are refusing to get vaccinated for whatever stupid reason, and it's insane. In the U.S. right now, people are they're leaving their work. There's shitloads of soldiers that are getting discharged because they refuse to get the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's actually quite strange here because according to our cultural things, we're usually against anything authoritarian,
Mm-hmm.
kind of. So
vaccine mandates, and people would be against that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you wouldn't actually think, and when it started, it was like that for a month, and then we actually started getting all of the vaccines. So at this point, we have the Pfizer, Moderna,
Johnson,
Sputnik V. No, actually, don't have Johnson, but Sputnik V and the Chinese one, the
Sinovac.
Yeah, Sinovac. Yeah, or the Sinopharm, if that's the. I'm not sure. Yeah, either way. And now the thing is that our political system is really strange, as some people are aligned more to Russia, other people are more aligned to Western Europe and the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are centric when it comes to just Serbia line, that's it. So basically how you picked your vaccine isn't if you trust in the way the vaccine was made. It's actually to which not political party, but to which political ideology you kind of subscribe to.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm pro EU, so I got the Pfizer one.
Uh-huh.
I think it wouldn't influence my thinking, but I did a lot of introspection and kind of did. So.
Serbia was part of the former Yugoslavia, correct?
Yeah.
And what was Soviet influence on that? I guess pre-90s.
Well, it was a socialist country, so
Uh-huh.
It was everything you would expect.
Was it part of the Soviet Union? My history in that time is messy.
No, it's completely fine. No, it was never part of the Soviet Union. That we were actually really the reason why Yugoslavia, at least like this was what we were told in history classes and what I've been reading online, and why it was successful is because we were really good both with the U.S. and Russia, so it was in everyone's interest to be okay with us, and that's kind of why it was working until people died, and then everything like shit hit the fan. So there's probably a historian somewhere choking on something right now when I explain it like this, but this is like
I don't think I've interviewed any people who are like modern historians. I've one person I did a podcast with, Amanda Dominguez. She did like I think she mastered in like cyborg anthropology or something. But she also like studied like ancient a lot of like ancient history stuff. So I don't know. Maybe she'll see this and barf a little bit.
Yeah. No, but it was a really interesting country from that perspective of being aligned to everyone, kind of.
Yeah, it was interesting kind of like growing up in the 90s and into the 2000s because like in the US, like I'm from Chicago, our history books were still some of the history books still had like the Soviet Union as the country instead of like Russia and all of the countries that came out afterward. And it was only in high school when I first learned about like Yugoslavia falling apart. My college was all focused on the Eurozone and just like the likelihood of that falling apart. But like, luckily, there's been fuckloads of things to study recently in the economics world.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was kind of the same thing here when you were the same thing. So I was born in 95. So when we were learning geography, a bunch of schools actually had still had like older maps and similar things with like incorrect borders and similar things were happening. I remember that, plus the whole aesthetic of schools was kind of still socialist, as you would expect.
I mean, I don't really know how that. So the things that I've been living abroad for a while, and there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences, and a lot of the differences that I've been noticing have been like in some of like the minutia of, you know, when are like landmarks of when you would learn a thing, or just like the laxity towards like kids kind of going out during the day from school. And so I really have no idea what like a socialist based school system kind of looks like.
Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, because again, I might be completely wrong here, but for example, the thing that you mentioned, like kids going to school on their own, it kind of feels more safe if it makes any sense. I mean, for example, when I was in Cuba, which was, I mean, it's still officially, I think, as a socialist country. I don't know if you can count it officially, but for example, I never felt as safe as I felt there, and I traveled like a lot. So
in Cuba, you mean?
Yeah, in Cuba. So in Havana, I remember like 4 a.m. You have like a bunch of buildings which are kind of crumbling apart, which should kind of make the context of it feel more unsafe, I'm guessing. But I never felt as safe as there. For example, even like in my hometown, Belgrade, I didn't ever feel that safe like there. I don't know why. And then contrast that, for example, to San Francisco, which is like an extreme, but contrast that to San Francisco, it's like a completely different feeling.
Yeah, one thing I don't quite understand also with I guess in that same regard is like maybe it's just the way that like the US for the last 20 years our news has focused on like sensational pieces, and the entire thing is just like, be scared, keep watching, you need to watch this or you're gonna die. Maybe that's why like I don't know if in like in Ukraine or in Serbia if it's just not reported, or if it is just like far less common that somebody gets kidnapped, or and then if it does happen, how seriously do the police take it? Do they feel like they have the actual ability to, you know, deal with a case?
I did have that feeling for a really long time, what you mentioned, as in that there isn't here any crime. I just think the news doesn't report it that much. I think that's the main thing. I remember being in San Francisco, I think it was my second time there, and receiving an Amber Alert. I think that's the correct term.
Yeah. So like somebody get kidnapped and everybody gets a text in the area.
Yeah. And I remember I was walking with two friends, and we got this. We actually didn't know at that point that it was pushed by the police, and then we saw. and instantly it was a crowded place. I think we were the only ones that reacted like what the police expects everybody reacts like. So we instantly just like started looking around, seeing what's happening, and everybody just looked at their phone like, and put it back into their pocket. So
Another one, goddamn.
yeah, god damn it. but but basically, that was like a really strange thing that happened. Like it's one of those, I'm guessing, cultural things. But for example, also here, for example, speaking with my mom, I remember when I was a kid, she always told me that the police is there to protect you, and I think during Yugoslavia that was kind of imprinted into everyone's brain that they're there to help you. And for example, with my generation, it is not as much, especially like during protests and how they're breaking similar things that have been happening in the US have been happening here since the 90s, basically. That's why when everything around Black Lives Matters and the protests happening there and how the police reacted, everybody looking here, I mean not just here, in France as well, everybody was like, yep, that's like how protests actually look like. So it wasn't like that much of a shock, for example, like for my US friends when they're watching it. So it's a different thing, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with this thought.
It is interesting. I'd say that like I guess one thing I've observed, at least in regards to police and my upbringing around like how we're supposed to be thinking about them, I never particularly felt super safe for them. My parents would frequently use them as like a threat, like, "Oh, you're being naughty. We'll call the police and they'll take you away," like for not finishing my food.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys would get blocked from the police sooner than I'd get picked up.
Yeah,
but like I had grown up thinking that they were something to be kind of feared and like not really trusted unless we're getting robbed, in which case then call the police. But yeah, just in terms of like protests and stuff, it's just always like we're supposed to be taught that like they're there to like protect and serve, but in like most cases they're there to like protect property, and just like historically they are never on the right side of history when it comes to like anything that's social unrest related.
Yeah. It's really strange. Oh, I remember where I was going with the thought.
Let's go back there.
We were talking about sensationalism and the news around crime and everything else. For example, here, and why I was talking about this is especially, I don't know if it's just me noticing it more, but in the last like 2 or 3 years, the amount of police on the streets is kind of much bigger, and I hate the fact that we're kind of okay with it, as in you don't feel strange about it, and I think people should feel strange. I mean, there shouldn't be a need. I don't know if it's like to make a false sense of security, or not, maybe even a false one, but to make a sense of security or safety. I don't know if it's something like that, or to scare off someone. I have no idea.
Are your police militarized? Do they have like? Is it just like does every officer have like a handgun?
Yes. Okay. So we have a bunch of types of police. It's a really strange one. You have the traffic one, which is normal one. You have the one that can basically write you a ticket for everything except traffic. Then you have a normal police which can kind of do both. The second one can be anyone, like even a citizen. I mean, you go
like an undercover.
Like no, but like you need like 6 months of training and that's it. It's not like a full police academy thing. Then you have normal police. Then you have something called, we call it gendarmeria here, which I literally have no idea how to translate it into English. It is like special police, and they like participate in normal police work as well. But those are the ones that you like kind of don't fool around with, those without any sense of humor, automatic weapons and the rest. And then you have like the special police, which I'm guessing would be different. So yeah, it's really strange when you see them and when they pass. I mean, yeah.
Is a police worker, or is like a policeman considered like I don't know about like a prestigious job, but like is it something that like somebody goes to because they want power, or is it something that like people respect and like this is something that you go to trying to be like a good positive force in your society, I guess?
I think not. I think in the US it's much more of a positive society thing. Like it's an honorable job. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. At least from my perspective, how I saw it. But here it's kind of again, it might be my circle of friends and everyone talking, but young people here usually don't perceive them as a good thing. Usually they perceive them as like corrupt people and similar things. Even though I hate generalizing things. I'm quite sure 70% of policemen are quite honorable and doing great work. It's like the 30% that does a crap job and kind of gives them bad press, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, like, that gets thrown around in, like, for people who say Blue Lives Matter, that there are so many of them that are doing good work. It's just one bad apple, but then, like, the rest of the saying, the one bad apple anecdote thing, it actually, like, it goes on, one bad apple spoils the bunch. So, like, one person doing corrupt things and fucking things up for everybody else, that person gets relocated to another place, but everybody else has to suffer for that, and then everybody else is like accessory to whatever the corruption that's happening.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it, but yes, definitely.
I mean, it's the same reason why, like, you know, all like the cop dramas, they're all focused on like the hero cops that are doing what they need to keep corruption under control, and there's always like corruption within the system. And like, while I understand that is probably going to be a problem with pretty much any like federally run program, I'm not saying that we should just, like, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but one of the big problems with police, I would say, kind of worldwide, is that just so many of different like societal issues are put onto the police. Just like dealing with homelessness, dealing with mental illness people, the mentally ill that are living on the streets. They're not trained to, like, in many cases, they're not trained enough to like de-escalate situations. They're not trained also to deal with people who are not in, like, not where they should be, or, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I actually always had good experiences with cops. I mean, it's not like I haven't had a lot of them, but for example, jaywalking as being one of them and getting a ticket. I can say it was a pleasurable experience. I mean, I didn't feel. I mean, I did screw up. It was my fault, so it would be really, really idiotic of me to feel like I was being attacked or something. So yeah, but
I hate jaywalking as like as a crime.
Yeah,
because like jaywalking is like a thing that auto industries lobbied for to get people to not walk in places. Like, you're not supposed to hit people with the cars. That's the issue. A person that's walking on the street is never going to pose more of a threat than a person in a car.
I like this take. I never actually thought about it this way, but it does make a lot of sense.
There's a channel, Adam Ruins Everything, on YouTube, and he talks about like it's dispelling a lot of like our like standard notions of things, and like one of them was jaywalking, and like, I don't know, just the last couple of years I've been mostly a pedestrian, and I try to cross the street whenever the fuck I feel like it, as long as I know I'm not going to be hit. But you know, depending on the country you're in, you can't do that.
Yeah.
They'll run you the fuck over.
No, it's a completely normal thing here. And then, for example, if you go to Vienna or some other city, it's suddenly everybody's watching the traffic lights and everything else. But here, like, it's a completely normal thing. Usually, you don't get stopped for it. It's very, very rare. But yeah, I remember, for example, in Phoenix, Arizona, it's really hard to jaywalk over a highway because I kind of felt like almost every street there was highway-ish. So it is different.
I'm happy with like the places that are doing, they're doing like throughways that like either go over or under, and it's for a lot of like animals to cross over.
Yeah. We have quite a few of those. It makes a lot of sense to do it that way, and it usually also is really aesthetically pleasing, having like a huge landmass of greenery over the highway.
So what have so you work at, or you're one of the founders of Tenderly.co. You work with, sorry, the term for it, something networking, distributive computing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like what you do, I guess?
Sure. So if it's like from a if it's from a distributed computing perspective, it's the same as programming, but the programs are running over multiple computers
Mm-hmm.
for it to finish. That's kind of usually types of problem that cannot be done on just one machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found it really interesting because it kind of, because I started programming in high school. I have been programming for, it's what, 11 years now, 11 and a half years. And this was, it kind of, everything was clicking in my head. And this was the first thing that kind of didn't click instantly. I remember learning about it. It was that you cannot correctly time how much something lasts
Mm-hmm.
when it's on two computers. So you cannot start the stopwatch on one computer, end it on another one, and be sure that that's actually the correct time.
Mm-hmm.
As in, you can actually get a negative result, which makes no sense for a stopwatch to get like negative 1 second or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of extremely interesting to me that things like that had happened. And then I did kind of read a lot about it, but I couldn't do it at my job. And then afterwards, I was in a startup and we got acquired by GoDaddy, and then there was a bunch of distributed computing problems there for the infrastructure things that we were doing, and I was so happy to learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
And after just continued doing it, and then in Tenderly, and that can be like a nice entree for that, which is basically what they do now, which is a CTO here in Tenderly.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I haven't been coding for the last like 8 months, I think now.
Oh.
I kind of miss it. Yeah. I mean, I do code at night at home because I still find it like a meditative state, more or less. I know this sounds really strange, maybe to someone.
Some people like to do like Sudokus and
Yeah. I don't know. I find it really interesting and kind of comforting. But basically, I'm a CTO here, and so running the team that's doing all of the engineering work on Tenderly. And like the really, really brief intro, what Tenderly is, we say that we're an end-to-end developer platform for people building on top of Ethereum.
Mm-hmm.
So the usual blockchain pitch of when people are digging, we pass the shovels, but we basically do a bunch of tooling and services that help people basically bring blockchain forward to the masses.
Mm-hmm. And you guys offer like a unique service where like you're able to test transactions on net without actually having to spend the like Ethereum for the.
Yeah, so that's like one of the most used features. One is the debugger, where you can just see what the transaction is doing while coding, and then the second one, most used one, is what you're mentioning is the simulator. Basically, you can test things out without submitting them on chain, which I mean saves money, and also you don't have to risk what will happen. You can actually see what will happen. So there's like a bunch of interesting things people have been doing with that.
Mm-hmm. So it was like distributive computing. Was this kind of like your foray into like the blockchain space, into the crypto space?
No, it was actually much more interesting. So there's two parts to the story. My initial, the first time I heard about it was that was first or second year of high school. I'm not sure. There was a conference here, and the whole conference was around. It was when SOPA Pipa Acta were happening, if you remember, around internet censorship and similar things. So there was a conference here called Share Conference, which was happening. So the speakers were Peter Sunde, for example, who was one of the founders of Pirate Bay, George Hotz, who is one of the people or the person who hacked the first iPhone and the PlayStation 3, and similar like-minded people, hackers, and similar things. So one of the talks, and me and my friend from high school were just trying to kill time between two presentations, and there was a presentation around Bitcoin, and there was like from 500 attendees, that particular workshop or presentation had like 15, and I remember being bored to death on the presentation, and in the end of it, everybody got, because at the end they like announced the first Serbian exchange or something similar to it. I don't remember correctly, it's a bit hazy, but basically they gave out Bitcoin to everyone in the crowd, which they gave out 20 Bitcoin to everyone that was in the crowd.
Holy shit.
Yeah, which was no money at all. So
20 Bitcoin now, that would be...
Yeah, I know. Don't calculate, please. Yeah. Anywho, so I mean, they were actually giving it out by printing out private keys on a piece of paper and giving out the pieces of paper. I mean, that's how unsafe everything was. And I remember, bringing the paper home and losing it, basically, because I saw no value in it at all. I mean, later on, I would find out that I'm retarded.
Heavy oof.
No, but yeah, it's one of those, and that's how I discovered stoicism. But basically, no, but basically, after fast forward a bunch of years later, it was 2017 or 18. One of my friends and one of the co-founders here, he was into blockchain. I think in 2016 for the tech, and then 2017 for the crypto side as well. Um, and he was trying to persuade us to have a career in blockchain. And we were constantly telling him that it will never work, and then it doesn't make any sense. And there was actually a hackathon here in Serbia, in Novi Sad, where it was a blockchain hackathon, and we said if we go there and win the hackathon without any prior knowledge to how blockchain works,
it's just proof of concept that this is bullshit.
Yeah. So we actually went there and won. That's actually how when the Tenderly name came to existence. But basically, we won. But mid hackathon, because it was a 48-hour hackathon, the first night we went out for a beer, and I remember 4 or 5 beers in, something similar, which isn't great to get drunk during the hackathon, but it was the case. I remember he was explaining proof of work in mining, and I said, almost drunk, and you want to tell me everybody does everything again? And he said yes, and I was like, well, that's retarded. And that's the first time the technology kind of clicked in my head. And from that point on, we kind of got hooked. I mean, it's a really interesting drug, blockchain, when the more deeper you get. So I'm guessing he won the argument, as we're a 21-person team right now building blockchain tech. So he kind of won that argument, definitely. So that was kind of our entrance into the space.
So what do you think kind of puts blockchain over a lot of like legacy tech in terms of I guess what you have like with distributive computing?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, I'm not one of those people that think that everything will be moved on chain. I think it doesn't make any sense. At least, I mean, not in the foreseeable future. I know people will say it will happen fast, but if we look into cloud computing, for an example, the majority of things running on planet Earth still is on premise. It's not cloud. So we still haven't exhausted the whole capacity of cloud computing. It's kind of, in my opinion, childish to think that in the next 4 years, everything will move to even a newer tech stack, which isn't yet stable or scalable. But basically, how I see it and how we see it is kind of blockchain being that protocol layer on top, where the most important things will run there. So not everything, but what's most important will be run on
like
chain.
Financial systems.
Yeah, anything, anywhere that you need to come to a sort of an agreement, and that's it. And then I also think the future is going to be multi-chain. I really think that only having one winner, never in history ever have we had a one winner for something. So it kind of makes no sense to me personally that, for example, Ethereum is going to be the main one, or Bitcoin is going to be the main one. It more makes sense to me personally to have that we will have multiple chains catering to multiple things, and yeah, with different trade-offs. I mean,
are there any other that are like on your radar? Because I think compared to like, you know, let's say the internet, you know, having to pick between like AT&T and Verizon in the US, having to pick between like AT&T, Verizon, Time Warner and stuff. Those are, you know, it's because they're like hosting the servers, but isn't kind of the point with like blockchain the fact that everybody is hosting it everywhere? You can't really monopolize it in the same way. It's mostly just like who are the token holders that are able to like make bigger transactions.
Yeah. So when it comes to the ones I'm looking out for, this is going to sound like a diplomatic answer, but I really like but it's not. So bear with me a bit. I did like the tweet where someone said that the EVM is the actual winner.
EVM.
EVM. So the Ethereum virtual machine, the thing that's actually executing the smart contracts, is called the Ethereum virtual machine, or EVM for short. And the thing that is panning out to be true is that the chains that are actually getting developer traction right now are the ones supporting the EVM. It doesn't have to be Ethereum specifically, But as long as it's like Ethereum-like from the perspective of a smart contract, it's gaining some developer traction.
Mhm.
And it kind of makes sense because people don't like to reinvest their money into learning new things and making new tools and everything else. So everything that's EVM enabled kind of makes sense. And then everyone that's bringing something new to the table is good. I don't like those networks that just like spin up the same things as Ethereum, throw a token at it, and then like, okay, sure. Don't like those. Everything else that is doing something interesting. So I don't know, Avalanche, Polygon, Phantom. Now when I started listing everything, now I don't have the luxury of leaving someone out. No, but basically, people usually know there are chains who aren't bullshit and that are actually bringing a lot of value to the ecosystem. I mean, in the end, it doesn't make sense to be a single chain maximalist. I mean, I think what we want is for blockchain to win, not for one. Because if we're in it for the tech, we just need blockchain to win. If you're in it to shill your bags, then at that point, you're kind of invested in Ethereum winning or Bitcoin winning, which isn't the point.
Yeah, I feel like that is very much what like most people are, because we're still on like the stock market mindset of like the company needs to win. It's all about like the shareholders, the stockholders, because that's like at least in recent history been the largest like windfall of wealth. It's just who's playing with the stocks in the smartest, most effective way, as opposed to like what companies are bringing the most value to the most people.
But I don't know. I see it. I'm literally looking like the technologist, and it might be a romanticized view of the world, which makes no sense. But I think first of all, in order for blockchain to succeed, I think we have to stop speaking that much about blockchain. I always give an example of Viber, Viber or Viber. I don't know the correct way to pronounce it.
But, I call it Viber.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. It's a really used chat app here in Serbia. Why it is my mom's favorite chat? It's not because, for example, it was one of the first, if not the first, chat that was used a lot that had end-to-end encryption. That's not why my mom actually picks to use it. She picks it because she likes the stickers, because she likes the game, and because her girlfriends are there. I mean, those are the three only reasons why she's using it, and it looks nice. She didn't say I use Viber because it has end-to-end encryption. Consumers don't care about the blockchain part of blockchain. I know it's really hard, I think, to hear that from someone in the space.
Yeah, but it is definitely much more like a developer pitch.
Yeah, I think, and it makes sense because we're still in the state where we need developers to build things that people are going to actually use. So I completely agree with the pitch, but it's kind of strange that it's strange to me that people are confused that we use the same pitch for consumers and it doesn't resonate with them. Of course, it's not going to resonate with them, and they don't care. So.
Yeah, I think the biggest like selling point to me was with like the creators, I guess. So like for artists, musicians, for like game developers, being able to create tokens that you're able to kind of that you can actually truly own and you can trade with people. Though I still like there are things that I like. I play a number of like different card games. So I that it's not on chain, but like I play one of the Yu-Gi-Oh card games, and then there's one crypto game that I got into, Gods Unchained.
Gods Unchained, yeah.
Which is on chain.
Yeah.
But like having ownership of like a card in the Yu-Gi-Oh thing, you can't sell like the individual cards. You can sell like your account. But then on Gods Unchained, you can sell the card to a person who doesn't necessarily play the game, but then like they can't play with it. And if they're just holding it as like a value token, then that's kind of valueless. I'm looking forward to seeing when like there are going to be things that you can kind of like use in one game, and you'll also be able to it'll still have some actual like playability in other things. When games start interacting that way, I think it'll be a lot more interesting for.
I think it would be a really good use case. But the thing that you should note in your thinking is that, again, you come from a person who probably likes collecting things. I'm guessing if somebody says, would you pay a monthly fee not to own the music that you listen to, which would be streaming, people would probably say no. So I'm not really sure how much people really care about ownership. I completely agree with you. I mean, I'm the same person as you. I have been playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! I have been playing Magic when I was younger as well, a lot. I still have those things, even though. So I literally wouldn't sell them now, even though I haven't played them for like 10 years. But they kind of still hold value for me. So it makes complete sense what you're saying. I just think people still don't care that much about that part. Consumers. I think we're all in our own little bubbles, kind of echo chambers.
Yeah, I guess.
But I completely agree. The gaming thing that you mentioned, that was like the main thing about NFT that has driven me to it too, as I was like a really, really big gamer. And I'm actually have been rediscovering gaming for the past couple of weeks and really been enjoying it. Not to digress too much. The idea of having play one game and then going into the next one and that same thing having value there as well or existing there as well is like my childhood dream come true, because I remember I played a lot of World of Warcraft, like too much. I mean, World of Warcraft is probably one of the worst drugs in the world.
I played RuneScape without being a member for the longest time. That's an even sadder drug. If you're at like methamphetamine, I'm doing crack.
Yeah, definitely. But I remember having the sunken cost fallacy of, because you have to pay a monthly subscription for World of Warcraft. I literally remember new games coming out and me having the sunken cost fallacy of, but if I don't pay for the prepaid game card, and then not continuing to play, kind of my whole progress has been lost. And it's not like a single player game that you kind of revisit. It's kind of there. It's kind of living world. It's not the same. Something's happening there without you. So I would be the happiest kid of them all if I could like take a sword that I have been playing for 200 hours to attain, or even more, and then bring it into another game and use it there as well.
Yeah, same thing with like achievements and stuff in games. Like PlayStation, Xbox. So many people like their like life goals. They tie a lot of their like value as gamers to like their gamer score. I think it'd be fascinating for the like for like world record in different games, like holding an NFT for that. That would be cool.
Yeah. That would be an extremely interesting thing. Yeah.
Which because people hold arbitrary value for doing doing arbitrary things in weirder and more insane ways. I posted this one thing in like a speedrunning group I'm in on Facebook. It's like, yes, I beat this game without using any upgrades. Take that, developers. How do you think? This one guy, and then like it cuts to the developers, and one of them is like, hey, this guy just apparently beat the game without using any upgrades in this amount of time. And then his friend behind him's like, why?
Yeah. But I remember, for example, but it kind of makes a lot of sense, and achievements would be a really, really interesting one. I remember when my friend there was a new WoW expansion, World of Warcraft expansion coming out, and because it had like the concept of realms, which are basically servers, and then because you had professions, the first person that would max out a certain profession in that expansion would get an achievement called the Feat of Strength, because you can achieve the once. And I remember us supporting him through the night. We were queuing for the game, installing it, and supporting him through the night.
I remember that shit happened on like RuneScape, MapleStory. Like, there was a long time before before games. If a game's been around for a long enough time, and they had like a more or less balanced leveling system without them having to make like radical changes to experience or levels, like level caps, then it was a big deal when somebody hit like a max level in X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
There would be like people would record it. They're like YouTube videos of like, oh, when this guy hit the first time somebody hit level 200 in MapleStory. Yeah. Now I have a friend who like he picked up the game for like a month. He's like, oh yeah, cool, max level, next character. Let's do another max level character.
That's it. Yeah. No, it was interesting. And I remember from that time when YouTube videos were like that, it was usually the song "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor."
Oh yeah, let the bodies hit the floor.
Yeah, and it's always the same one, and it's always like Windows Movie Maker intro, which is always the same, and with that song, yeah.
Good times, man. Like, It is weird moving from so a lot of these games. One of the big pushes with them was a lot of like the communities, like clans and guilds,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently that is like starting to become like a bigger thing. People trying with a lot of DAOs are just trying to figure out how to get people to organize and do something with like pools of money, make cool things happen. That's essentially what Mochi's doing.
Yeah, it's definitely what Mochi is doing. As I see it, yeah.
And like just trying to figure out different ways of like bringing value to a community of people with similar ideas or a similar aesthetic and interest in things that are going on. One of the other people I did the podcast with, Mark Balin, I think he's like working on creating like a platform that it makes it easier for that to happen. And like one of his like theses around it was there were like a lot of organizing groups of like famous writers, authors, musicians from like the 1600s and like the founding fathers. Like they would regularly just like hang out and talk about shit. Like this is. Did you guys know that this happened in this in the field of like biology? Did you know that this guy's writing this song? Here, let's all have a jam session. I'm sure they were smoking something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely like one of like the growing things I think that's happening on the blockchain, and people trying to figure out how to give value to things because so many people are also like now disillusioned with we need to be working and it's got to have an end that you can sell, otherwise why the fuck are you doing it?
Yeah. Well, at least just I kind of hate the fact that there isn't more DAOs where you just pump the money in and then finance things that you guys kind of care about. Something like on-chain lobbying, more or less. I kind of hate the fact that now you also need to have a token around all of that, and okay, it's okay for governance and similar things, but trying to force something, or okay, let me bring this to one level of abstraction up. I hate when projects introduce a token just for the sake of having a token. I always feel like it's a money grab and that's it. So similar thing has been happening with DAOs, but also a bunch of projects have been trying to get decentralized just for the fact to have the sticker thing of we're decentralized and have a token. If it makes any sense.
Sorry, I lost track for a second. I got a message and a thing, and my attention was drawn away.
No, it's a completely okay. No, I was just saying. So for DAOs, I kind of hate the fact that there isn't more DAOs which just like collect money and use that money to finance things they care about. That versus DAOs, which right now usually have like a token that should have some kind of utility, which is also like feeds into this other thing, which can be yield farm, which can be swapped for something. And I kind of hate that fact. I think because it is really easy when you have a bunch of people to collect money. Now it's the easiest. Yeah, it has never been so easy. I think that would be actually the most correct way to say it. To actually collect money and finance things you guys care about. That's, for example, why I like Moloch as a DAO as well, because I kind of feel it's straightforward, especially when you read meditations on Moloch. But it kind of is really straightforward what they're doing. They're just financing projects that they need to function and they care about, and I think that's just what the successful DAO should look like, not something that has a token which suddenly needs to have a project around it.
Well, I think the point of that is that like a lot of DAOs are trying to seed outside money, as opposed to like people like internally deciding like we want to organize, we want to get this project done. It's still I think it's part of like the crowdfunding mentality of like Kickstarter and stuff, but like using it's specifically the crypto space. And like you kind of want to be one of those people who gets to like capitalize on making the decisions and then pull your money out as soon as you can, as opposed to like I want to see that this group succeeds in whatever they're trying to work on.
Yeah. Well, that's, for example, why I like DAOs that lock your money for an XYZ amount of time and then just give you a way to pull in and out, and that's it.
Yeah. On the note of just to kind of like tie in like the crowdfunding and like one of the gaming things, if you are looking to get in back into gaming, I think one that it's still super on my radar because the creator is working on like a new project. But the original game is called Undertale. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No, unfortunately not.
It's like a 64-bit style RPG that was completely funded on Kickstarter. The initial goal was $5,000. The game raised $55,000, but it quickly became one of like it was made by two people. One person who did the coding, writing, designed the game, pretty much did everything except for art, and all of the pixel art for the characters was made by this one person's friend. And so this was like literally a two-person developed game, and it hits so many like important themes and ideas. The music is stupendous. The soundtrack, I'm pretty sure, has made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in itself. And so this game was a completely independently made game, but funded by a bunch of people. And like the indie space is definitely growing. But this person, after the success of the first game, they've started working on the second project, which is being released episodically. There are 2 chapters out right now. And I think this is going to be like a writing masterpiece, honestly. I can't spoil too much. It's so good though. The first chapter came out I think 2 or 3 years ago, and the second chapter came out just last month. Both chapters are completely free, which is something that's very confusing to me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it does sound like that. Yeah.
The first game is still like, in most cases you can get it on sale for like $12, but normally its regular price is $20. And he's expanded the team for this next project, but for some reason he's releasing these chapters completely free, and the story already is amazing. The gameplay and music and everything's awesome. I have no idea what the fuck what his plan is with this.
Well, maybe getting you hooked for the last chapter and like $100. No, I'm joking. But
I would honestly, I would be 100% down for that.
Yeah, it'd be a really interesting business strategy, a really risky one, but I think it would pay off like big time if it works out correctly.
But like one of the unique themes that they push throughout the games is friendship and the idea that nobody needs to get hurt for anybody to be successful. You can play through both. You can play through the entire games without hurting anybody. You have to do combat. You have to deal with bosses, but you can completely negotiate your way out of every single thing without having to look in strategy guides for everything. And it's still somehow a very compelling game, without being super graphically intensive, without being super like.
What's the name of the second one? You mentioned the first one was Underscape, if I'm correct.
So it's Undertale.
Undertale, okay.
And the second one's called Deltarune. It's an anagram of Undertale, and they use a lot of the similar assets from the first game, but it's told in a different way. And supposedly, Deltarune was timeline-wise was actually written before the story for Undertale, but he didn't know whether or not it would succeed or how it would do. And so he proceeded. He crowdfunded this other thing. He made it a well-contained story. And now with Deltarune, he's exploring more, trying to be a little bit more. It's weird to say, but he's trying to be a bit more kind of insane with his ideas, which is crazy because the first game is already very, very insane. From anybody who knows the final boss, or honestly even like one of the first NPCs you meet. I'm very much like a huge proponent of like video games as literature, and I think the value of this game in storytelling is something that like is going to be pushed forward a lot going into the future. One of the big gaming ambassadors is his name's Matthew Patrick from the Game Theory channel.
Yeah. Okay.
You know this guy?
Yeah.
He was part of like a YouTube ambassadorship to the Vatican, and
I didn't know that happened actually.
Yeah, and traditionally one of like the big things you do whenever you go to meet the Pope is you give them a gift, and this guy gave him a Steam code key for one copy of Undertale. as his gift, and it's unlikely that he would play it, but
Yeah.
it's a very fascinating, like, symbolic gesture just because of the themes of the game. Because like a lot of games have become very like competitive. There's a lot of gamers are very often associated with being like toxic, being very infantile, or but it's in my opinion a way that we interact with how we would want to interact with the world is kind of a reflection of how we interact in like these play spaces. And the fact that this game gives you that opportunity to not have to be not to just kill and get points. Yeah.
It's really interesting. No, I would definitely take a look. I have been looking while you were speaking. I actually did see screenshots of this and similar.
So good.
Yeah.
I'd love to replay it again, but there's also like there's a plot reason why I don't want to play it again.
Huh.
Yeah. It's so mindfucky.
You're teasing this too much. I'm going to stop this podcast and go play. Or just into a let's play.
Dude, I've been seeding it. I would love to do like a let's play thing while also podcasting, but not. One of the reasons why I started doing like the Mochi gaming archive is because I do have like I do feel passionately about a lot of the stories that happen in a lot of the games, and I kind of want to share that with some people. And so I'm trying to go through some of the games that I think are the most influential in each of like the different genres that they come from. So like really influential horror games, really influential RPGs. I'd love to do Undertale at some point. But right now, I just got to tease the shit out of it because I love the game so much.
No, you're selling this. It kind of even feels like Pyramid Scheme-ish at this point.
I got my brother to play it, and he really liked it. And I think I sold him on like the next 2 chapters also because it's completely free. I don't know. Maybe it's going to turn into a fucking cult. Yeah.
Maybe it's a similar thing that happened. I know this isn't a video game, but Nightfall, the podcast, if you have ever listened to it.
I've heard of it. I've never listened to it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like has a cult following. It's really interesting. Like once you get into it, it's really hard to get out of it.
Yeah, the video gaming. So wait, is Nightfall related to? Is it a gaming podcast? What kind of a?
No. So it's basically no, probably a Nightfall fan would kill me, but
getting a lot of communities on your tail.
Yeah,
this one.
Yeah. Basically, especially the historian one. No, but basically, it's I call it a radio drama or radio. It's kind of like a radio show. It's basically it's kind of meta because like it's a small radio show in this place that doesn't exist called Night Vale, and you follow. If I remember correctly, I haven't been listening for a couple of years now, but Cecil, if I remember correctly, is the name of the host, and it's just. You listening stories from that city, and it's really eerie, especially in the beginning.
So it's kind of like a storytelling radio podcast.
Yeah, and it's really good, and I really kind of.
Is it like improv?
No,
it's
I think
all scripted and stuff.
Extremely scripted. Yeah, but why I use the term radio drama? At least here it was used quite a bit, especially before TV was a thing around. Dramas being played over radio, basically. That's why I'm using that term. But it's really interesting because, for example, I know they talk about parking. For example, today the weather is nice, etc. Yada yada yada. When you're walking next to the park, be sure to not look at the hooded figures, and they just say that, and that's it. And similar things. It's extremely interesting.
What kind of like world is it placed in?
Well, our world. A small town in the U.S. At least that's how I perceive it, and then everybody knows everyone, and then basically.
Sorry. How big is generally is like the audience and the?
I think it's huge. I have no idea. I remember while I was listening, it was like the Reddit community. Like, give me a second. It was welcome to Nightfall. Here we go. It was.
Are you able to see the screen, like scrolling down?
Yeah. It's 50K. It's 50K people on the subreddit.
How long has it been going?
a really long time. I remember. So the first time I heard about it was, just give me a second. It was 8 years ago. So so longer than that probably.
Damn.
No, it's really interesting, and it's twice per month if I remember correctly.
Dope. Yeah, I have to check this out.
No, definitely. I think if you like the first episode, you'll be hooked. So
I know in terms of like podcasts that have huge followings, there was a huge leak apparently that happened recently at on Twitch.
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently the number one highest paid Twitch channel is what the hell? It's a Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
I didn't know that. I actually have the article open here that is waiting for me to read it for the last. I don't know. It's Critical Role. Yeah.
Critical Role. Yeah. People love the role playing, the surreal world, and people like improvising stuff.
No, I remember. It's really. I don't know if you remember. I don't know if it's still a thing, but Twitch plays as a concept.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. I mean, that's kind of what got Twitch off the ground, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember when it was. Yeah, when it was getting big. That's how I first found out about it.
Yeah, I think the first big event that there was a Twitch plays was at least that before I was aware of it was Twitch plays Pokemon Red, and they somehow managed to beat like all of Pokemon with people chatting A, B, up, down, up, like deleting Pokemon, doing random attacks.
No, I was always surprised by the fact that even with so many people that want to do a malicious thing, they kind of always succeed in beating the game.
And Pokemon Red wasn't a super hard game. The only I imagine the only real big pain in the ass was getting past the not your rival, but the guy before him. His name's Lance. He uses a Pokemon who's it's only weak against one type of other Pokemon. I think it's either only weak against Dragon or only weak against Ice. And you need to have a specific Pokemon with specific moves to get past them, and somehow they still manage to get past that zone.
Yeah, no, I always found it interesting. Both that and those games which kind of need reflexes. One of them being, I know Quap was one of them.
Oh yeah, Quap.
Yeah, and similar. I it was also surreal. Although that I kind of feel like it was just random button mashing was sufficient enough to beat it. So stuff like Pokemon and things that need at least a bit of strategy was always interesting.
I think there was one where it was they had a goldfish that was on screen, and each part of the camera was coded to a button on the controller. And so the fish would swim over to this next thing and go up or down or press A or B. I think the fish died. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but yeah, did it get though far in the game or not?
I don't know if it managed to beat it, but I think there was a part where it was just holding the up button, and people were "What's going on?" And the fish was just upside down.
And it was yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I remember it was I think it was a YouTube video where they were explaining artificial intelligence and machine learning. If I remember correctly, they were using, I don't know if it was a neural network or a genetic algorithm, but the idea was to train it to play video games only with one or two inputs. So it got really good at playing Mario and similar things. But what I always found interesting, and then when you tell this to laymen, it can be an eerie story, even though it's not. So it was playing Tetris, and the goal wasn't it wasn't to get the highest score, it's just not to lose the game. So it kind of at some point got trained to itself that the a half second before the last block would fall in Tetris and you would lose the game, it would pause the game and just hold it that way.
Oh man,
it's the longest game, so it was really interesting.
Yeah, like video gaming is definitely one of the places where a lot of engineers are getting really experimental with stuff. There's a biannual marathon. It happens in summer, and I think somewhere close to like the beginning. So somewhere in like December or January, called a GDQ, Games Done Quick. And it's just like a week long marathon of people speedrunning video games. And they raise money for normally two foundations. They do the Prevent Cancer Foundation and Doctors Without Borders, which is awesome. They're completely like not corporately sponsored. They have like one big sponsor, which is like a t-shirt printing company. But like it's completely community organized, which is insane because I think for the last like 8 or 9 marathons, they've hit I think at least $2 million in the week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a super big event. And one of the showcases that they always do every year is the tool assisted speedruns, which are speedruns that are conducted by are like pre-programmed and are played in front of people using predetermined inputs. During one of the showcases, they actually using I think it was either 1 or 2 Super Nintendos. And I think 4 Super Nintendo controllers, they completely programmed a functioning, working copy of Skype into like I think two Super Nintendos that were playing Super Mario 3 using just like inputs and the controllers, and like they were just like going around the venue like. With like a camera that was working using the hardware in the Super Nintendos, and like shit like that. It's like there's a lot of people who say like without a profit incentive, people wouldn't do creative things. Where the fuck is the the motivation for that?
Yeah, definitely. No, it's extremely interesting how people can execute on crazy ideas like that.
People just want to play. People want to play with things. If it's like interesting enough, they have the time and like they're not starving to death.
Yeah, definitely. I remember one of my friends during college. I think it was first year of college, and on the main city square or whatever you want to call it, they basically hacked one of those video billboards, and they played Space Invaders on that.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But yeah, definitely people really like just to play, and that's it.
So you said you participated in like hackathons and stuff.
Yeah.
How did you get into? So you said you've been programming since at least high school.
Yeah. So since 2010.
What was your like prior experience like doing hacking? Were you hacking in World of Warcraft? Or were you?
No, you couldn't. I remember turning on Cheat Engine to go faster and getting banned like 5 seconds later. They kind of auto-detect that. No, haven't done any hacking in any way ever. I mean, the closest to hacking was there was an internal hackathon in our college, organized by students. And I remember we got this new system of tracking buses around the city where you could like type in without an app, type in the code of a particular station, and you would it wouldn't send you a message. It's called I think it's like the USSD code. I think that's like the official term. Basically, you input the code and it just like pops up a message which would tell you how many stations it needs to get there. And I remember they started charging for that, and it was like literally 1 cent per invocation, which is like a really, 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 really small amount of money. But because it was free for like half a year, I kind of felt like it was injustice to start charging for it now. Again, even though it was just a cent. So I remember on the internal hackathon around 3 or 4 a.m., we managed to reverse engineer the API and get the exact location of every bus in Belgrade. And then we made a website where you would just input the code of the station and it would like get charted on the map
without having to pay for it.
Yeah, and it's nice. Free. Yeah, that's like the closest to hacking we ever got. Actually, and I don't know if you count for it, getting tickets for Tomorrowland. because those usually get sold out. One year, we managed to get into the sale like 5 minutes before it started. That was like one way. Yeah,
that's a good way to get your tickets.
yeah, true. And then the second year, if it didn't work, the same thing didn't work. But because they have like 2 pre-sales and then 2 general sales, we tried the first pre-sale, it didn't work, and then I joined the second pre-sale, was looking at what the application was actually doing on their side, coded up a bot that would do the same thing. And then on the general sale, we were around like first 400 or 500 people in the queue, something along those lines, and that's how we got the tickets.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, sorry, go on.
No, but that was like the closest to hacking that we ever got.
Yeah, whenever I hear like hackathon, I think of like which person can kind of get into the other person's computer first.
Yeah,
and like
those are CTFs usually. Those are called CTFs. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually a thing. I thought I was just making something up.
Yeah. No, there was. I remember when we were GoDaddy, there were like internal CTFs during conferences where you need to get access to a server or similar things, and those are like extremely fun to do. But I remember the Serbian team on one of them, our team, were actually it was a meta hack where we actually found the solutions on the server to all of the assignments in the CTF, and we just have given them that.
Oh, you hacked the competitions.
Yeah. It was strange, but other than that, yeah, hackathons, for people listening that don't know what it is, it's usually like a 24 to 48 hour competition where you get a subject or like a general theme, and then you have to come up with usually a piece of software that kind of tries to solve a particular problem. And then depending on the hackathon, you usually have to come up like with a very loose business idea and pitch it. So it's like build your own startup in like 24 or 48 hours usually. But we went to so many of them that we kind of got good at it. One of my friends and co-founders, Nebojša, on another podcast, he said we started doing them professionally. But basically, we won over 13 first or second places. On one of the hackathons, we actually won both first and second place.
How did you do? Did you hack that one? How did that happen?
No, so you couldn't because there was 4 of us, and you couldn't do like a 4-person team. So we did like 2-2. But because you cannot enroll twice, one team was called Tenderly, and the other one was called, I think you would pronounce it Irlandet, which is Tenderly reversed. And then when they were pronouncing the winners, and they pronounced, when they were saying who the winners were, and then called the winners on stage, then we got our Tenderly shirts on, and like there was 4 of us. Because before we actually raised our seed round in Series A, we were funding ourselves. And before we started charging for Tenderly, we were funding ourselves through our savings. And then the second one was like every month and a half, we would go to a hackathon to earn our wages, basically. So at that point, I mean, we were confident enough to basically go and be sure that we would get the money. It was kind of like that. But I remember the 12th or the 13th one, I almost got a panic attack at the end because I kind of discovered, wow, what if we break this streak? It was the first time I actually asked myself,
what if we don't win?
Yeah, no, but I mean, we did have the money. We did have the savings. It was more of an ego thing of what if we break this streak of 12 wins? Because getting 12 wins is like 2 years worth of going to hackathons. So it was really, and when we actually did win a place there as well. And after that, we never actually participated in a hackathon.
So it's an ongoing streak still.
Yeah, it's still an ongoing streak. You should really quit when you're on top, I think.
It's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, basically. But yeah, and hackathons were really interesting. And at some point, you come up with these strategies on when you sleep, how you sleep. For example, the beers that they mentioned at the end of first day it's a really important part. A really important part of the strategy as well. So yeah, it's extremely fun.
Nice. So in Mochi, we talked, and so you recently got a dog.
Yeah.
So and a lot of your goals are kind of around that.
Yeah. So I'm a first-time dog owner. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a proud mom of a Corgi, but basically, as a first time dog owner, I mean, I definitely planned on giving a lot of time to the puppy.
Mm.
I mean, if you don't plan that, I think you shouldn't get the dog. But basically, it literally synced up beginning of my next Mochi journey.
Mm-hmm.
So this was one of the most undefined journeys when it comes to like what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think the official title is have a loving relationship with my dog. I think that's like
Mm-hmm.
the way I phrased it, but it is basically to track my progress around all dog specific things I have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, not like I got, I don't know, while you're potty training them, and then like, I don't know, get the, how do you call them? The diapers. I think it's diapers as well for puppies, but I don't know, like get diapers and similar things. It wasn't like logistic stuff. It was literally stuff where I do things with my dog. So training him, for example, to
Mm-hmm.
sit, lay down, give paw, similar things, or going to specific walks. Because at that point, I started during the weekend seeing to, um, as my dog goes to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another dog here as well. So he does have a
Oh,
good
that's
time.
awesome. That sounds like the
Yeah,
best place to work.
yeah, it's really interesting. We have a huge office and a huge balcony here as well, and they just run around and play around. Um, but basically, uh, through Mochi, I had started thinking, because I usually like, what do you plan on doing next? That question,
Mm-hmm.
similar. And then on Fridays, I started asking myself, what can I do during the weekend for me and my dog to have the best time? And then we started doing. I never go to the woods for a walk ever.
Mm-hmm.
Started doing that some weekends and similar things. So it has been super fun so far.
Do you have any like kind of training goals that you want to achieve with your dog? Like be able to like go certain places, dog be able to do
Do
certain things.
XYZ.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm slowly but surely starting to think that maybe at some point, although that will happen for at least 6 months, start going to dog shows.
Hmm.
I don't know why. It sounds really interesting, and it seems like dogs are having fun there. Not the ones where I don't know, you hold the dog and that's it, but they're doing, for example, obstacles and similar
Mm-hmm.
things. I That sounds interesting, and that's something I will explore when he grows up a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to training, it most of the things that I have been focusing on is understanding the needs. I never understood, for example, again, I wasn't a dog owner ever. When
Mm-hmm.
they say you literally understand what your dog is thinking from how they move or how they look at you and similar things. It actually does work that way. It's really interesting how from the body language you can infer a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal is
To become
basically
fluent in your corgi.
fluent, fluent in dog and corgi. It's kind of it's really undefined. I'm still learning a bunch of things, so I'm one of those people. Until I know at least something about the subject, I cannot set a goal for myself. So right now it's like really free form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, how did you? Where did you get the corgi? Was it from like a friend? Did you go to a
No, so it's
store?
is it the kennel? I think kennel is the correct term in English, if I'm correct.
Was it like a rescue?
No. So kennel is trying. No, kennel isn't the correct one. From a dog breeder. So I thought
Gotcha.
kennel club is a similar thing. So corgis are for some reason really rare in Serbia.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, they're in Ukraine. If I'm informed correctly, they're a really.
I
You
think
can see.
normally you have to go to a breeder. It's kind of same thing
No,
with
no,
like.
no, no, definitely you have to go to a breeder, but it's much easier to find a corgi in Ukraine, because I was literally looking at. I got so desperate at some point that I was actually
Were you
looking
always
into.
like dead set on a corgi? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I have been waiting for 26 years to get a dog.
Uh,
I can wait for a couple of months to find a corgi. So basically, I was searching for a breeder for. I think it took like 5 or 6 months to
mm-hmm.
find a breeder that was like both. I really wanted to have a humane breeder, not somebody
Mm-hmm.
who manages to mistreat the female dog of, I don't know, having two sets of
Like a puppy
births.
mill.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't want that, so I was actually visiting those breeders as well, and which for some reason isn't the standard thing here,
Mm-hmm.
and similar things. And then when I finally found the breeder, that was back in December. So I really hate the term of reserving a puppy. It kind of it feels like an object. I hate it, but basically reserved the puppy
Mm-hmm.
in December. And Tapas, who that's his name, was born in May, and he has been with me since July. So
Mm-hmm.
it has been really fun so far.
What are corgis like? What is their specialization? I don't imagine they're like hunting dogs or.
No, so they have been bred to be actually a herding dog,
Really?
which makes no sense. Yeah, which makes no sense
Huh.
with those small legs. But that's why actually they bark a lot as a trait, because you kind of need it during herding. That's the first thing, and that's why they're intelligent as well. Because the idea is how they herd is they nib the. My God, what's the how do you
Legs?
call? No, yeah, the legs, but how do you call the bottom part of a sheep's leg?
Like a hoof or the.
The hoof. Yeah,
Okay.
hoof. Yeah, my brain is slowly but surely starting to turn off. But yeah, basically nib on the hoof, hoof. Yeah, I think that's the correct
Yeah.
way to pronounce it, and bark a lot. So they're actually herding dogs, and that's why they're.
So it's like having a little
loud.
piranha. It's like having a little piranha herding a bunch of sheep.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting. Yeah, so for example, when he sees birds, he starts running around. He actually doesn't attack them, and I'm actually really looking forward. My friend on the country, he has his grandparents living on the countryside, and they have sheep, and I'm really looking forward to bringing it up. So, if evolution has, if evolutionary, he should just start herding automatically, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll find it really funny if it does work that way. So.
Yeah, my dog is like from we got him or so my wife's sister adopted him. He was a stray, but he was a puppy, and we still have no idea like kind of what he's about, what his destiny is supposed to be. He's got a lot of anxiety issues, but like he's super smart and he really loves running around, and so like I sometimes think he's trying to herd us, but oftentimes he's just trying to escape. So I really have no idea.
Yeah. No, the thing that I find interesting most about Tapas is that he's so chill that you can literally do anything to him. I have a bunch of photos where I have, because he looks like a fox. I have him around my neck, like when rich people have like dead foxes around. I have a dark sense of humor, and he just lays there and he's so happy just to participate in wagging his tail, and that's it.
Look at me cosplaying.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That, or like bringing him into my shirt and then popping out here, so it looks like I have two heads. And he literally doesn't complain about anything. He always just wags his tail and really likes participating in all things. So,
are there any like like long-term health concerns for the corgis?
Yeah. So their hips, their backs, and then their knees as well. Because if you think from an evolutionary standpoint, you would never get something in that format because it wouldn't survive, basically. So yeah, that was also really hard. So finding a breeder that has like all the scans and everything necessary a couple of generations back, just so you be sure that, I mean, you can never be 100% sure, but at least to mitigate the risk to some point around them being healthy. So yeah.
I think that's one of my concerns, just because we don't know what kind of our dog's history is supposed to be. We're not exactly sure what to be worried about, so we're just trying to make sure that he's like eating as healthy as he can and that he's getting enough exercise, because he's got plenty of energy.
Yeah, no, but it's a great thing. I never felt that type of love being directed toward myself, so it's really interesting because it kind of feels the only selfless love I ever felt. So it's really nice.
One of the things that you said that you would be interested in talking about, mental health.
Yeah, sure. So the thing, it was one of those questions of hobbies and everything around that.
What's your hobby? My mental health.
Mental health and issues with it. No, the thing why I mentioned it there is because I'm a huge supporter of therapy as a thing. And at least here, I know in the US it's not that much, but at least here there's this huge stigma around mental health. I think that it's there because of a couple of things. I want to like circle back to the socialist thing that we started this whole conversation with. At that point, it was like the need of the many outweighed the need of the few, and you kind of didn't have individualism as a thing. So from that perspective, therapy was never a thing because you don't care about an individual that much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm really dumbing this down a lot and not giving it any justice, but it kind of feels that way. And for example, my parents know it's a good thing and they fully support it. But for example, my mom says I could never go as a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's very much that generational stigma, especially.
Yeah, definitely. And then here, for example, when I say openly, when somehow I don't know at a house party or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
somebody mentions it, and then I say I go to therapy too. You actually see a bunch of people that go, just don't talk about it because, again, it's kind of stigmatized that it's a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing. But why I put it there is I'm not a huge fan of TED Talks. I kind of feel like they're usually bullshit. You kind of feel good about it yourself that you watched it and that's about as what you get from it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this TED Talk where literally only one sentence resonated with me, where the guy said, like, people go to the dentist regularly, you go to your eye doctor regularly, so it's like a type of hygiene that you kind of hold yourself accountable to,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody thinks about mental hygiene. And I remember listening to this in high school, and it really resonated. I never actually went to therapy back then.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading a lot about after that around about psychology and similar things, and from that point on, I really found the topic really fascinating and interesting. And then 2.5 years ago, I thought, hey, why not try it? And it's the best money. It wasn't like I was in a dark place and I needed help. I cannot speak from that experience if somebody went through that and then going through therapy and how that looks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my journey was much easier than somebody who's, for example, battling with depression or something similar.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't know. I didn't see it hard or I didn't quit because it wasn't that hard for me. That's why what I
Mm-hmm.
want to say. But I say it's the best subscription I pay for, as in I go once per week,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the best money I spend literally.
Is therapy like expensive in Serbia? About how much would you estimate like in
Yes, yeah.
USD it is?
Mm, so let's say if the average wage here officially, the average wage here is around $500, 450, $500 per month.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the average wage. One therapy session is around $25. So
Mm-hmm.
it isn't like if you go 4 times a week, you would basically spend the fourth of your income on that. So it's not that high on people's priority list what to spend money on.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the reasons why it's there isn't as much of it in the U.S. is just because it is prohibitively expensive for most
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Like a 1 hour session could be like upwards of like $160.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, that's a lot. But for
Yeah.
example, here you can also get government subsidized therapy, but it's usually like once per month,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really hard to get on that list and similar things.
How
So
frequently do you meet with your therapist? And is it like
uh,
is it in person? Do you usually go online?
in person during the lockdown and everything else, of course, it was online. But
Mm-hmm.
I like the in person thing much more
Mm-hmm.
because I think a bunch of it is lost. So, for example, I'm holding my hand like this now. You're completely losing this because it's out of screen. Um, and I go once per week usually. I mean, lately it has been once every 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But yeah, we can say once per week. But
Uh,
it's a great journey. I mean, the most. Okay, sorry, I stopped you actually
no,
for a
go
second.
on, go on.
No, but the moment I kind of saw that I progressed a lot. I remember when I started out, I was asked if I want to go to group therapy or individual, and I said I could never talk about my thoughts with a group of unknown people.
Mm-hmm.
And then
That
ten
dark
months
sense of
ago,
humor.
yeah, and that dark sense of humor. Yeah. And then 10 months ago or something like that, my therapist asked me, "Hey, I'm making a group," and even before continuing the sentence, I just said yes, and that's it. And then you can see how kind of how your
Signing
thoughts.
you up for the orgy. Here we go.
Yeah, yeah. So we're sacrificing you. Good.
See there. Bring a pot. Bring a dish.
Yeah, bring it.
Everybody's bringing something.
Yeah, yeah. Bring your robe. But basically, at that point, I saw that I feel much more comfortable talking about both emotions and thoughts and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I saw the delta of progression of my thoughts around it and ways of expressing myself. both internally and externally. So I think it's like a really, really good thing that if somebody can put money aside for it, definitely should.
It's definitely one of those things, especially as like socialized healthcare is becoming a more regular discussion, especially in like U.S. politics. Like the question of mental health, whether or not that should be covered, and I'm fully behind the fact that it should be like something that everybody has access to.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think a bunch of things is also fixed with meds. So, for example, here I have unfortunately a couple of friends that literally didn't go to normal therapy, but they went to a psychiatrist first because they would go to the doctor. They would get like official. I actually have no idea what the term for that is. Like you should go to a psychiatrist, like
Like a referral.
a referral. Yeah, let's call it a referral. Referral, and literally after one session, they would get something against depression. A med, usually Zoloft here, and I think it's really bad because I don't see how. I mean, they are professionals, but I don't see how during a 1 hour conversation can you be 100% sure that the only way to fix this person's problems
That it's a chemical imbalance.
yeah, that it's a chemical imbalance. Yeah, and I really hate that fact. And I don't know. Um, I literally had on a birthday party yesterday a talk with a friend of mine who said like, yeah, I tried therapy, but the meds were killing me, and I said that's not therapy. It was really strange, yeah. And then we had like a 1 hour talk around it, and he's actually going to try therapy now, so I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, to me that is really just kind of it's probably because I'm just from the States, but I kind of prescribe everything like that I see in other countries as being like kind of part and parcel, somewhat a result of things of trends in the U.S. And like very much in the U.S., it's like if you can prescribe pills for something and people are going to pay for it, they'll do that because drug manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, they incentivize people for prescribing that stuff. And especially because like therapy, a lot of it is introspection, a lot of it is having to be able to feel comfortable enough to talk about something before you're even able to confront it, because that was stigmatized for so long. Most people are turned off by that. If I can just pop a pill and not have to deal with my problems, that I will do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very much like I'm very much I do also find a lot of problem with that. Incidentally, that is actually one of like the core reasons behind Scientology, the overprescription of like pharmaceuticals, specifically towards mental health.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I learned about it when I went to their home base which is actually in Hollywood.
Interesting.
Yeah, I went there with my brother. It was really weird. The person who gave us the Scientology spiel was actually from Taiwan.
Interesting.
Yeah, apparently they had recruited her from Taiwan, and like she was super gung ho about it, and was trying to recruit me and my brother. And I told her, and she asked, "Well, what do you know about Scientology?" I'm like, pretty much everything from that one episode of South Park.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, that's the only information I have as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I also attend therapy bi-weekly. It is like a super helpful, like there are a lot of things like evolutionarily that we benefit from, and we evolved as a social species. We don't deal with things by just like taking medicine or eating something better. There is human interaction with like your parents, with your family, with the community members, and because we've gotten so much more individualized in like our ability to lock ourselves away and try to self-medicate, often like you forget that we need to talk to people and learn how to talk about things that are bothering us.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm 100% behind like the talk about doing therapy, talk about learning how to deal with things with other people.
Yeah, and basically getting the tools to know how to handle yourself all around it. No, the reason why I usually mention it basically is, for example, that friend of mine who I talked to last night, when he was mentioning that he was feeling depressed, and that's how the whole thing started. He said, and when I told him that I go to therapy, he said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I mean, not something major." And he said, "Then why are you going there?" I'm going there for something not major to happen. Basically, it's kind of a prevention thing. And then also a thing where he said in the end, he said, if you, who I see as stable, is going there and feeling okay with it, it kind of empowers him to go as well. So that's usually why in like free form discussions like this one, I like to bring it up.
Yeah, keep doing it. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Support it. Yeah, going forward, trying to be like a more ethical society, it really needs to be something that is. I also like that it gives more value to like people who pursue psychology and clinical psychology, especially. Because that's very much like the joke of the sciences in many cases, and they're doing super valuable work. A lot of the idea behind getting into different sciences is like the financial incentive, but people will pick things oftentimes and decide in their major, like, I want to do this because of this. I have a fascination with X, Y, or Z. I have a fascination with insects. I have a fascination with mental health, with specifically Alzheimer's, with neurotransmitters, because of personal things that happen with them. And there is, it's frustrating that there is regularly a financial disincentive to pursue something that means something to you.
Yeah. I think with the COVID vaccine and COVID research in general, we saw that there is enough money for health, whichever type of health. And then when you throw more money at the problem, it kind of fixes itself faster. It's not that it needs like 10 years of testing or whatever.
Yeah, it's all really annoying when they demand you do you need like 5 years of historical data testing before they try to like implement something that would be otherwise a simple fix.
Yeah.
But then I guess that's like the balance with you need actual expertise in a thing versus.
No, but for example, it's sad. It's sad, for example, how much time it needs to find subjects for human testing, and now I think all of the lists were filled up literally in a day. So it's interesting how we can do a lot of things, and this is going to sound socialist to me, but how we can do a lot of things when we come together really fast and in a good way. So
yeah, I semi-regularly have this like socialism discussion with my wife. So like Ukraine, formerly part of the Soviet Union, recently they've been at war with Russia, and there's a lot of people who are still of that Soviet mentality of like, oh, things were so much better back then. We should stick with Russia. We're not that different. When there are very much like ideological issues, and very often to me the notion of like socialism in terms of social issue or social policy gets conflated with like the government structure of like a socialist regime.
Yeah.
And like you can have free markets that are properly regulated for the sake of people. You can have millionaires, but at the same time, take care of the poorest 90%.
It's just a really hard problem to tackle.
It's a really hard problem to tackle.
Or actually to start a conversation about. I think it's even more of that than actually tackling it. Although I'm guessing I'm oversimplifying things. But what I want to say is,
I mean, I'm definitely oversimplifying the socialism.
But I think that you would need to persuade a lot of people who don't think like you into thinking like you to actually start talking about the issue in the first place.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of the how do I start this conversation before I can convince you of it in the first place.
Yeah.
And like in my mind, the most important thing in for that is establishing that you are trying to like actually speak in good faith, that you are discussing for the purpose of trying to come to a better solution as opposed to trying to like win an argument.
Yeah, definitely.
And like that goes also for like religion, theology, philosophy.
And discussions. Yeah. Discussions in general.
Because like so many people conflate their ego with their beliefs. And if it feels like you're attacking a person, you're not going to be able to get them to discuss, much less agree. And while it's perfectly fine to disagree, as long as you're disagreeing, trying to speak about a thing honestly and genuinely, as opposed to as just an attack or as just a, make yourself feel better about being wrong about something.
That's why I always found sports teams. This is going to sound like a huge logical leap, but sports teams interesting. I don't follow sports at all, and I don't care about sports at all. I literally follow sports every 4 years when the Olympics happen, and I basically watch finale of like 2 sports that my mom
and then the best bloopers.
Yeah, and then the best bloopers. That's it. Yeah, so that's my involvement in sports. But basically, I always found sports teams interesting, literally because of that. Because it's not even that they're discussing how to play the game; it's literally the same game. They all agree how the game is played, but you still kind of get an argument throughout it. So,
yeah, I mean, it's all like a part of national identity or your like tribal identity. Like the US, people will start shitloads of fist fights and like riot over football teams, hockey teams, baseball teams. Though I think baseball's definitely been on the decline last couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, last decade or so.
Interesting, didn't follow that. I remember, so again, I don't follow sports, but I remember one of my best friends from high school. He's a huge American football fan. So I remember watching the Super Bowl with him always, and it is nighttime here, so it was a really interesting activity.
Super Bowl is always fun. The commercials are always interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Though apparently, I think it's been also on the decline, both because of political controversy with like the football player Colin Kaepernick kneeling and during the anthem that became like a hugely politicized bullshit thing. But in addition to that, I think it's like CTE. It's like chronic brain disease that happens in like most professional players, and it's showing signs of like significant brain damage developmentally for people who played it. Like
I didn't know that. Yeah, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of people saying like this should just be fucking banned. We're giving kids and like just we're giving people brain damage.
Yeah,
and like throwing money at them.
But it kind of I remember reading interesting trivia that American football players basically have one prime year, like one prime season, and that's it. Like when they're in their prime, and that's it. It's really strange. Compare that to tennis or soccer or similar, where you can have like a couple of years of being your best. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, contact sports super dangerous. Like I love martial arts, but like it's good that there are like rules and regulations that prevent them that prevent certain, permanent injury or like killing a person or like blinding them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Although I never liked fighting sports. I remember watching boxing for the first time with my mom, and and I remember her saying the term wasn't, it was a royal sport. It's like a gentleman sport, something similar. And I said, why fighting? And she said that's because they hug in the end. And I don't know if she was sarcastic or not. I'm really bad at detecting sarcasm, especially at the age of 4. But but basically, I really remember that scene vividly. So yeah.
Boxing is definitely, so it's recently been getting more of a resurgence because of YouTube celebrities getting into boxing, which is stupid. But I mean, boxing's also not, it's also very primal, very stupid. But like if you think about like the legends like Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson idolized Muhammad Ali, but if you see any videos of him in his like as an old person, he's just not there, and it's so sad and like terrifying
that you can just fade away like that. Yeah, it's really strange.
It actually kind of. Have you watched Squid Game? This will date the podcast.
Yeah, this will date the podcast, sure. Like October 13th, 2021. No, but basically, I did watch half of the season. Still haven't finished it.
It's very much like a Hunger Games meets Saw thing.
Yeah, it's a similar thing. I remember I also watched Alice in Borderland, which is like a similar thing, and I thought it was going to be extremely similar. I just thought Netflix saw one thing working and then just doing a clone, so just so people watch. But then I mean, I've started watching it. The directing and everything else is like really, really good. I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan actually of Korean cinema.
yeah, their production values are fantastic.
Yeah, my favorite director is I'm 100% sure I'm going to mispronounce this, but Park Chang Wook.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, his movies are amazing, and then I watched a bunch of other things that came from Korean cinematography, and it's really, 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 really interesting. So
Park Chan
um,
Wook,
yeah, yeah.
good for
I
me
think
on
the last
spelling.
thing that he released was Handmaiden.
Yep, that's right here. Uh, yeah. I think my problem with the movies and like the stuff that like Netflix is kind of recommending and are becoming like trending. To me, Squid Game is very much in like the same vein as like Bird Box, if you remember that from a couple years back.
Yeah, although I didn't watch it, but yes.
It's got interesting. It's got pretty okay writing.
Mm,
It has good acting. What's very well shot, but it's just utterly gruesome.
yeah,
Uh,
it is. But I think that shock kind of makes you want to still watch. I think that's why people watch gore videos. It's not that you're enjoying them; it's just you kind of cannot stop watching.
yeah, and I don't know. Like, I personally don't think that's a good thing
Mm,
because like it like the writing then can take a little bit more of a back seat, and to me it's the same as like sex appeal,
yeah.
where you use it to kind of distract from the product.
Mm,
And the story in itself, it's got some solid themes, it's got some great character work,
mm.
but because the violence is supposed to be like the big selling point as to why the idea is wrong or right.
It kind of goes over everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And like Bird Box, it was the same thing. It was like it was an interesting premise, but then like you're watching like 20 minutes of people committing suicide,
yeah.
and like it makes you feel grim, but that's supposed to also somehow motivate you to feel like this is a more significant work than it was. Um,
I
not
think it's that
not
that
saying
you.
Squid Game's bad, but like
Yeah,
that's the vibe I
I
get
think
from it.
when you're using something as controversial as violence or whatever, there is also a point where it kind of you kind of start to get desensitized at it.
Hmm.
As in, the first episode was really hard to watch.
Hmm.
I actually no, I don't want to spoil this for anyone.
Yeah, let's try not to spoil.
Yeah, yeah, no. Okay, sure, definitely. So it's not the violence that they found really hard to watch during the first episode. It was everything around it.
Hmm.
But by episode 4 or 5, I don't know where I'm at right now. I really don't care when people die that much anymore. I
Hmm.
know it sounds strange, but kind of now people are dying. That's
Hmm.
it. Like, okay, sure. It kind of it becomes expected.
Hmm.
I don't know. I remember watching Hunger Games actually, which I don't see like as a cinematography masterpiece,
Hmm.
but I remember that first, and this came out what 10 years ago, so I'm not spoiling too much. Uh, the first time they go out of those holes or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
when the kids start killing each
At the
other,
cornucopia.
yeah, yeah, and when the kids start killing each other, it was actually hard to watch. But
Hmm.
by movie 2 or 3, okay, it's a movie about kids killing each other. Not really, but
Hmm.
it kind of loses the punch it has the first time you see it, and that's the thing with Squid Game. I kind of felt or feel right now that when somebody dies, it's expected. It's
Hmm.
a death show, so I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's just I think the thing that like bugs me both like with the desensitization, but like I don't know, maybe it is just like it's a thing that makes us kind of like wake up for the story.
Mm,
Um, either like the terror or like the disgust,
mm,
and then I guess maybe you're more receptive to whatever the larger themes are.
maybe, yeah, maybe makes sense.
Um, I have the same feeling I think of with like horror movies.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not a fan. Maybe that might be a thing as well.
so I like horror movies, and especially like horror video games because they're
Mm,
able to experiment a lot more with your visceral response as opposed to like your
mm,
mind,
mm,
like trying to digest something. It's like you have a physical response to whatever's happening
mm,
in the thing.
mm,
Um, And in my mind, there are consequences to that, like making a person feel like that. And I guess it's books have the same thing. I'm not saying it should be banned or anything, but I think it brings up the question of whether or not the rest of the work is valuable enough to warrant just like the attempt at discomfort, making the viewer or the audience uncomfortable. Which is also very hypocritical in my mind, because like I'm working on the zine, and my piece is like the entire objective is to fuck with you as you're reading it.
Then it makes sense that you're making these points. But I don't know, I'm a huge fan of horror video games, but horror movies not that much. I don't know why. For example, I think because in video games it's much more, I like the term that you used, visceral, where because you have much more agency.
Yes.
Taking away that agency makes it much scarier than watching a movie, because watching a movie is like a really one-sided thing where anything I do won't make a difference. So I mean, I literally cannot do anything.
I definitely think that like that's one of the unique one of the unique abilities of video games in terms of storytelling and as literature. The fact that you have a say in how things happen and whether or not things happen.
Yeah, I think it's that. But again, I think with video games, I'm reiterating my point, but taking away agency is the thing that makes it scary. I don't know if you played the first Dead Space game.
Oh yeah, I'm actually thinking about doing that one for the upcoming video game stream. It's up for a vote. It's between Silent Hill 2 and Dead Space 1. But yeah, I love that game.
I mean, I think it's terrific. Both I think Game Maker's Toolkit or someone did an analysis of the game. But the thing that where the UI is in game and everything everything is happening in the game world itself. And then the moment, there is the scariest moment in the game, I'm not going to spoil it, but the moment where you can literally do nothing about it was so hard to watch. But then, for example, I'm going to make a huge jump here. I don't know if you watched the omnibus movie Wild Tales.
No.
Maybe. It's if I'm correct, or if I'm not mistaken, it's an Argentinian movie. It's actually a couple of movies in one. It's not a horror movie. But there's this one of the stories is happening on a highway where one guy is speeding, the other one goes past him, and then they start it's like a road rage thing where they start first showing off the middle finger to each other, and then the other one at some point tries to kill the other one. It's really strange. But I remember watching it, and they're in the same car at some point, and one of them is choking the other. And I never felt while watching a movie that I was kind of in the car with them. It was like a really strange feeling. And at that point,
is it from a first person perspective?
No, not at all. No, and it was like really hard. And I don't have like I'm not scared of getting choked, or that it triggered something in me that I have a phobia around something. It was just really strange. And then
a fetish.
Yeah, it's a fetish. So I got both aroused and scared at the same time.
It was the most terrified boner I'd ever had.
Yeah. So basically, like, what was that? Sorry. Again, there's the sense of humor. But basically, why I found it really interesting, and I actually rewatched it 6 months back as well, and felt the same thing. I was watching a movie, but I felt like I lost even the agency I didn't have, if it makes any sense what I'm saying. Like I couldn't.
Was it like a panic attack?
No. It was. I actually enjoyed the feeling. It's really strange. Now,
so fetish was a good word for it.
Yeah. No, but I think the thing with I don't know, jump scare movies is that people get scared and like, ha, it's not real. It was kind of the same thing here, but it's like much stranger. It was much.
You felt much more like it like invested in it.
Yeah, definitely. It's strange.
There's a movie that I love that didn't do well that I can recommend to people, but I don't know if anybody else besides me has watched. Hardcore Henry, not a porno. I'm sure there's a porno that's named it, but it's not.
They didn't have to do a pun, just the same name.
Yeah, it's also point of view. So it's an action movie, but all first person. It's so cool. the plot is very like, You're like being chased down by like some like weird Russian techno authoritarians. And you're just like this like super fighter guy. It's so badass. Like I saw it in theaters. It had a very limited theater run. They gave you like a free comic that was just kind of like a prequel to it. But I brought my PlayStation 3 controller just to like hold while I was watching the movie. It was so cool.
Interesting, yeah. So it's like an extra dimension of experience without any interaction with it. But
yeah,
interesting.
I highly recommend that movie.
Yeah, yourself. That's actually quite creative what you did to bring the controller with you.
I don't remember where I got the idea. I don't know if I saw it on like a board talking about the movie. Yeah, it didn't do too well, but it was, to me, it's a really fun action movie.
Well, it's an experimental piece, so I'm guessing it has a niche somewhere.
Yeah. I know it takes place in Russia. I think it won like it was on like a Canadian film tour before it got to theaters in the US. It won a few awards, but like blockbuster in box office it didn't do super well.
No, but interesting. Haven't ever watched a movie from first person perspective. There was also a question of, I don't remember who did this video on YouTube. For video games, like if you have first person games and third person games, what would be a second person game? And they were using the game Driver. I don't know if you played it.
I'm not sure.
I think it's Driver. Just give me a second. Yeah, it's Driver. Yeah. I think it's Driver. Or it's not Driver.
This one?
Here we go. Just give me a second.
Most 3D character-driven video games.
Speaking. Yeah, it's Driver San Francisco. Yeah. So basically, because you have the ability to transfer your mind into another person's mind, and then you drive the car. It's the plot sounds really dumb because it kind of is, but and then they argument where, I mean, the ending is really, really good. I don't know if you ever plan on playing it. Actually, I don't want to spoil it, but it's really.
I've never heard of a driving based game where there's anything remotely close to like spoiler worthy.
No, they are literal spoilers in driving games usually.
Okay, you're fine.
Yeah, basically, I'm sorry for this, but yeah, but basically at the end, as you can transfer your mind to like other people's minds, and you're this assassin who kills people for some mob boss, but you're actually a cop. You can hear how dumb the plot is, but the last mission, your mission is to kill yourself, and you basically transfer into the body of someone else, and you're in a car, but you're actually controlling the car in front of you as you're chasing yourself. If any of that sounded like me not having an aneurysm, that
sounds really confusing to try to control.
It is very much, yeah. And then they argued that that's like a second person game. It's a really interesting video. It's also really nice to watch, like when you're sleep deprived and everything makes sense at that point. So,
and when the fact that nothing makes sense is like, oh yeah, that they get it.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, I can't wait to share this with my colleagues, and then you're trying to explain it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, there've been like, I definitely with this like a indie renaissance essentially. I'm super excited for like new developers to start like be like getting the funding to do like cool shit, because we've definitely gotten to a point where there are just like a couple big studios that publish games that are like really high budget but are ultimately kind of shitty.
Yeah, definitely.
Like big EA games. Nintendo doesn't like to make a lot of so they put a lot of polish on things, but they're not willing to be super experimental with a lot of things, aside from like their fucking video game controllers, because they go they I don't know what they smoke before they decide what controller they're going to use for their next system.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. No, I do agree. Although with Nintendo, for example, they usually go with the, hey, we have this crazy controller. What should be the main mechanic of the game? So we can showcase it. So I think that's an interesting one. But definitely, I do agree. Indie games are much more interesting both to play and as I mentioned. So I'm rediscovering gaming. So for the last 7 or 8 years, it's mostly me once or twice per week watching other people play. It wasn't me actually playing the games.
Yeah, video game spectatorship's gone up a lot.
Yeah. And it kind of scratched that itch, but I have 8 years of back catalog right now that I'm trying to go through, and it's interesting so far.
Yeah, I don't know how many like different podcasts I've like, hey, if you want to use me as a resource for what games you should play, like I love telling people like great games.
I'm definitely going to take you up on that because, as I mentioned, I'm quite sure I missed quite a lot. So,
yeah, there's a lot of like funny shit out there. There's a lot of like, I don't know. It's also like the esports world. The esports world is very fascinating.
Yeah, I have been watching that usually, especially the semifinals and the finals for, I don't know, Halo, Counter-Strike, Dota, League of Legends. Even though I don't play those games, it's really interesting to watch.
I don't follow much like shooters or MOBAs. I follow a lot of like the fighting games because like that there's a lot of like person to person. I've seen like a lot of like a lot of beefing from from gamers, which
I said interesting. I didn't see that, so it's really interesting to see. But yeah, I for fighting games, I do usually just look at the Smash Bros games, and those are really interesting for me to watch.
Oh, they just released the interesting that you mentioned Smash Bros because they just released the final DLC character for the most recent game, and this I don't know how much you're up to date with Smash.
Literally only when huge esports events happen, that's when I take a look at it.
The most recent game has just like the most unbelievable roster of like characters to play as, and this is pretty much only thanks to the success of the lead director in like getting people to be on board with it, because the most recent character that was announced was Sora from the Kingdom Hearts series, and so you had to get the license from fucking Disney.
Yeah, gaming.
Yeah, and like everybody's very like picky about like what their character is allowed to do, how they're allowed to look, what attacks they're allowed to do. But like this one Nintendo game has Square Enix, Disney, Konami, Sega. They got like the Doom guy from the game Doom.
Yeah,
he's a costume for some of the characters. It has so many franchises that are like unbelievable to like mishmash together. Like you could have
also fighting against each other for, I think, for the player bases. A bunch of them are actually fighting games. I know there are some Tekken characters, if I'm correct.
There's one Tekken character that got in, Kazuya. You can have Kazuya from Tekken fighting Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter, fighting Terry from King of Fighters. You can have him fighting Pikachu. Steve from Minecraft made it into this game. Yeah, it's absurd.
I didn't know that.
They got Banjo. You can have Steve fighting Banjo and Kazooie, fighting Cloud from Final Fantasy.
Yeah, no. It's really interesting to have that. Another thing that you're mentioning this now, I haven't played it almost at all, but the Fortnite, and then also circling back to the NFTs to connect a couple of subjects now. The whole metaverse idea of having everything in that metaverse and then games being made around it. I think Fortnite is doing. I mean, nobody cares about my fucking opinion. Of course, Fortnite is doing great. It's one of the biggest games in the world. But
they have a shitload of collaborations, though.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to say. So both Star Wars and I don't know what else I saw.
The Marvel universe.
Yeah, it's complete. It's extremely interesting to see.
Did they also have John Wick?
I don't know. Maybe I didn't follow that much. I did sell Star Wars, Marvel, and all the rest of the Disney things. But I find it really interesting that you can bring such huge franchises into a game that at first glance, I mean, a fighting game makes much more sense to me than having the others that I just mentioned. But then you see this and see that apparently people like it, and then I mean it makes sense to me that people like it, but it's surreal to me that there is that amount of money that you can throw at a certain franchise holder for them to give you the rights to something in the game.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing, like, because video gaming, it has grown into such like a multi-billion-dollar industry. And especially with like content creation, like video gaming content has, I don't know how many more billions of hours have been uploaded to YouTube, and like it has become such a more significant percentage of the content on YouTube. It's becoming more of a mainstream. Being a gamer is becoming less of like a stigma.
Well, I remember, for example, when I was playing video games in elementary school, when I was just starting out, it was like a boys' thing to do.
Yep, that too.
Now it's completely different. Although I think that's mobile gaming's success. So because it has been much more accessible to actually play games.
But yeah, no, there have been a lot more female players. There are, I think, for the first time, actually, I think this past year, there was the first female player to break into the top 10 players of Super Smash Bros. Melee. And I've known a couple of trans players in like the Street Fighter space. The person who's like the number one over like the last several years in the Mortal Kombat and like team fighting games was biologically male, but is asexual, or I don't think asexual. They're gender queer, gender neutral. I'm not exactly sure the way they identify. They're also a furry, and so like people are. It's combining a lot of like these otherwise marginalized groups and starting to bring them in.
Yeah, because it has been the place. I think because it has been like a place for weirdos throughout most of pop history. And then you had people flock there who were like that. But now I think it is becoming a bit popular to be part of that, which I think is a great thing, because with it becoming popular to be weird, and I don't see any of those people as weird. I'm just saying
in like a negative sense. You mean?
Yeah. When it becomes popular to be a geek, a nerd, a weirdo. Suddenly those groups, and I mean it hasn't fixed all of the problems, but it's definitely helping with accepting those groups as well in the larger public space.
Yeah, letting people, because like to reiterate, like people just want to play, like you know, if they don't have to starve, if they don't have to constantly like kill themselves working, they want to play, and you know, it lets people play with each other and it breaks down like the barriers that would otherwise prevent them from them.
Because I'm guessing the logical, and I lean left as much as one can lean to be a liberal and everything else. So, but I'm guessing for anyone who's not like that, when you have a connection with someone, like, oh, if they like the same thing as me, which in this case would be gaming, I want to find out what else is the same, and then you discover, oh, it's a fucking person. Of course, everything is the same.
We also like shooting guns, and we also don't agree over vaccines.
yeah, definitely. Like what was the same thing? We like killing people. Great. Okay, let's continue. And that's how we have shootings. Yeah, but basically, it's a really interesting subject.
So we're coming close to time. Do you have anything like coming up? Anything that you've been like working on? You kind of want to share or plug?
Well, I would definitely love for everyone to check Tenderly out. It's one of those things. So tenderly.co or our Twitter account. So if you're a blockchain developer, definitely check it out. I think it will make your life much easier. So it's kind of it's a thing I'm most proud about from both my professional life, but personal life as well. I mean, as a founder, I do see this as a like huge part of myself. That's one thing. And then the second thing would be, I do invite everyone. So I do have a hobby, and I don't know if the correct term is a hobby or not. I really like reading trivia and stuff from history and similar things. And what I like to do is when you read about a certain period in some countries past, I really like listening to the music from that time while reading to that. and I discovered a bunch of really, 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 really interesting music that way. So basically, just going to Wikipedia, searching for something that might be of interest to you, a country of sorts, reading from that, going to that specific period and listening to the music while reading to it. It's a really, really, really nice experience. So
you're in like the music channel in Mochi, right?
Yeah.
Post that shit there.
Sure, definitely. Makes complete sense.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. It's wonderful talking to you, man.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it so much.
All right, I'll lead us out. This has been R Mochi Podcast, episode 16 with Bogdan Habic.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you for listening.